What kind of company is Facebook? From your perspective. Who here has a Facebook account? I'm pretty sure everybody has one. From your perspective, what kind of company is Facebook?
Like social networking.
Social networking? What do you mean by social network? What does that mean to you?
It's just like interconnecting people from like all over the world. Just
For
like,
the purpose of,
well, that kind of like varies from like people to people. Some people just like show off their life and they're like, this amazing thing happened, and they like post. And then some people like do it to like connect with family.
okay,
If,
so
like,
different reasons.
Yeah.
Social networking for different reasons, right? Depending on the individual. Anybody else? Anybody else think that Facebook is something else? We'll put social networking. Facebook. Anybody else thinks that Facebook is something other than just a social network? How much does it cost to get on Facebook? Why is it free? Yeah, but why would they make it free? They don't have to make it free. Why is that a choice?
All other social media is free too.
They want as many people on as possible, correct? Make it free. So you say they made money off advertisements, right? So with those advertisements, how does that work in terms of people using Facebook?
Because so many people on Facebook, it incentivizes companies to want to put their advertisements on Facebook. So there's a lot of people on Google.
How do those advertisers know who to market to?
Data, that's Facebook.
Right? Okay. So they look at individual behavior, right? And it's why you get pop-ups for shoes. Like, I actually kind of like those. Why did this one particular pop up for me? Why did this particular J. Crew sweater pop up for me? Why did this thing pop up for me? So they're gathering personal information, right? So that they can make money, right? I would probably say Facebook is a right, just like Google. To me, Facebook is a mass psychology corporation. Why is that? It's using your individual behavior in order to make money. Okay? It's looking at the behavior of over 3 billion human beings in order to target ads, get information about you, what you like, what you don't like, et cetera, et cetera. The same could be said for Google, which is why when you get on Google, random ads pop up for things you might probably like, right? So think about that for a second. You participating in something that's basically a psychology experiment, right? And it's a social experiment to see where you fit in and how they can make money off of you, right? Where you're able to purchase things in society, in our economy, keep it going. Which leads us to this, right? Social psychology. We're talking about the masses, okay? Society deals with the masses. There's you. Here's society, or what we just deem as others. How do these things influence you? Give me some example of ways how society influences your behavior. Give me some rough examples. How how does society influence your behavior, right? You go on Instagram, you go on Facebook, people put I'm a social influencer. What does that mean?
They have a lot of people looking at what they do.
Right? We're lots of people, and the power of that people, right? We established this is a lot more than just little old you, but where's the power in that? The power to make people think and behave in a certain way. Where's the power in that? Right? The power could just be the sheer number of people that do it. And they isolate you to not want to be left alone. Throughout human history, as we look out in the world today, what are some positive benefits of social influence? What has been created for positive human progression because of social influence? Look around you. There's houses on the block. The houses have addresses. They have to be built to a certain zoning. There's red lights, green lights. There's schools for the purpose of gathering a bunch of human beings for a common theme. Those are all because people subscribe to the power of the influence, right? Those are very powerful things. We're like, oh wow, everybody's building houses. Guess what? I want one too. Right? Everybody's driving cars. Guess what? I want one too. These are the positive benefits, and they're all around you. Everybody's getting a degree. Guess what? I want one too. Right? These are all these influences, behaviors that society, if we're positive. Now, what are some of the negative throughout human history we could say are negative influences from the grand society? We could say war, right? I enlist in the Army or the Marines or whatever, and they say, hey, Mr. Ross, we need you to go out and protect this and that, protect this oil field, this and that. Anybody comes here, you shoot and execute them. I've been in a war for 4 or 5 years, I've executed 300 people, right? And then I come back to society and they say, oh yeah, by the way, make sure you just don't kill nobody because we describe that as murder here. You're like, oh, okay, but yeah, I committed murder somewhere else, 300 people I killed, right? So we see that social influence is extremely powerful, make us do things we probably don't want to do even in the first place, for whatever reason. We're like, oh, that was my mission, that was the authorities gave me liberty to do such things, right? But if you go somewhere else, now the situation has changed, it no longer applies. Which means that the nicest of you have the capacity to go out and murder hundreds of people, be part of a genocide, ethnic cleansing, right? Right now, we're in this situation, we think, oh, no way we could do that, that's impossible, I would never do anything like that. Put in the right situation, with enough influence, and we all have the capacity to do some very, very horrible things. So keep that in mind as we look towards influence in social psychology. All right, so there's about 3 very big theories within social psychology. And just looking at what we talk about now, the social thinking, the social influence on others, antisocial relations, and pro-social relations. These kind of work against each other, right? We're looking at the forces of push and pull. So whereas we said, hey, there's some really great things that make human beings progress in society. We've innovated society. Now we got computers, the internet, social media. You're able to look up any math problem and do it in class, as opposed to before when I grew up, no, you had to do it, you had to figure it out and try to use a calculator. And then we say the destructive part, right? Yes, antisocial stuff requires things to be destructed, to be destroyed so that new things can emerge, right? So we're constantly seeing a push-pull. So we could just look at our society now and say, hey, Democrats, Republicans, liberals, versus conservatives, whatever your mantra is, your political beliefs, right, religious beliefs, all of the above. We can say all these forces are either A, against something, and we want those things destroyed in society, so therefore our agenda can be accomplished. B, the other thing is, hey, once it's destroyed, hopefully we innovate something beyond that. Now we got a whole new thing out there in society for us to live by. And we want to induce norms, right? We want to induce norms because norms create order, right? The room is not chaotic. But if we look out in the universe, we say the universe is chaos. But then we have things like gravity and things where planets orbit stars, and we say, okay, well, there's some sort of order there, right? So in order for new things to come about, stars have to explode, new stars have to form, and now we have order. But it takes a lot of chaos, it takes a lot of destruction in order to get there. That's part of human evolution and progress, too, from a psychological perspective. So the three theories here are social thinking, where we look at focus on social influences that explain why the same person acts differently in different situations. Right? Different situations. Are you the same person in every situation you encounter?
No.
No. Right? You might have a certain behavior as a student. Like, okay, I'm an excellent student. I'm very nice and respectful. Right? On my job, I'm very nice and respectful and get my job done. But then in another situation now in society, you could be, a totally nasty person to people and treat people like crap. Right? Which we talked about earlier with Carl Jung, sort of the shadow, right? The shadow is the part that only a few people know about you in reality, not the mask that you put on when you come out into the world. Attribution theory, behavior of others explained by crediting either the situation or the person's disposition, which is saying that the attributes of behavior are situational. Like, hey, I only acted like that because that was that particular situation. It called for me to act like that. I wouldn't do that under a normal circumstance. Right? Next, we got fundamental attribution error, which is a tendency for observers when analyzing others' behavior to underestimate the impact of the situation and overestimate the impact of personal disposition. Which is essentially saying people are who they are no matter the situation. Who believes that? Who believes that you are who you are regardless of the situation? Or who thinks that, hey, people tend to act according to their situation?
Yeah, I think people tend to act according to a situation.
Okay. So whatever the situation calls for, they're gonna change the way that they behave and conform to that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who in this class thinks that they're conformists? That you just go with the flow? That you do what everybody else do? Who in class think that they're unique? That they are special? That you tend to do things that others don't do? Right? We're probably all conformists.
Yeah.
Right? If not, well, to a degree, right? If not, we'll probably be in jail somewhere. Or we'll be extremely clever to get away with the heinous crimes that we've committed, right? Criminal and civil crimes. Which means that we kind of follow the norms. We follow the values of the place we live. Even though we may come from other cultures, other countries, we tend to follow American way. Right, the values, we follow some rules, but we'll also bring part of our identities with us, and we'll reserve that for other situations. Why is that? We don't want to create chaos again. Everybody wants to move away from anxiety and move towards sort of a disposition of peace and pleasure. Factors that affect attributions. Culture, right? culture is the most powerful force out in the world, right? A lot of people make mistakes and error of thinking race. Like, oh, race, ethnicity, culture, society, group, like, they're all completely different things. But I think here in America, we tend to lump everything together, right? But they're all completely different things. But culture is the most powerful force. And culture can be entered and exited, right? I'm Catholic, right? I'm a Roman Catholic. I believe the church tomorrow and be an atheist, right? But then I say like, hey, maybe I'm, have some cultural affiliation with the Catholic Church, right? You can adopt Asian culture, East Asian, Oriental culture. You move there and become part of it. Doesn't matter what you look like, right? It doesn't matter what you look like or where you come from. Culture can be entered, culture can be exited. You no longer subscribe to a culture and its ways, beliefs, practices, behaviors. So keep that in mind. Culture is the most powerful force though on earth. And that is because of the social influences of culture. We tend to want to conform with groups because we need to feel accepted as opposed to think for ourselves oftentimes. We may have some contrarian beliefs. Whose behavior? Very important, right? Not all individuals are the same. There are some outliers, some people who are not influenced as much with society. Those are the exceptions. Our deliberate, admirable actions are attributed to our own good reasons, not the situation. Those are the exceptions, right? But very few. These are outliers. With age, younger selves' behaviors are attributed to our traits. Attributions matter, which means situational. Attributions to a person's disposition or to the situation have real consequences, meaning that we live in a society of rules. Society is kind of like a game. Whoever plays the game the best wins, right? Whoever manipulates the game probably has the most power and the most money, right? We got all the people that follow the rules to a T, and they just want to be somewhere in the middle. And then we have the people who absolutely just stay out of the game, right? Which probably won't end up with enough power or enough money to satisfy what they truly want in life. So you think of that model, you're like, well, life, it sounds like life's a game when we talk about interactions with other human beings, right? Therefore, you have to identify what game we're in. What is the game of school, and how do you beat it? Remember we said C students run the world, right? Very rarely are you hearing on TV about the great scientists from Harvard and the professors and these, you rarely hear any of that stuff. What we want to hear about is celebrities, right? And the people with a lot of money, the people with a lot of power. The people who went and get straight A's, 5.0 GPAs in high school, things like that. Those people are rarely talked about. Which means that the people who do have the power and money recognize it's a game, found the minimal standard, probably subverted a lot of the rules of the game, and knew how to manipulate it and get what they need to get, right? So even when I teach business at Dominican, we have to teach, it's a responsibility to teach ethics, right? Ethics in business. But it's a very, very loose subject to teach, right? Business is about making money. Ethics is something that's completely subjective. But even businesses have found a way to subvert and influence people to believe that they're good. And typically what they do is create charities. They create a nonprofit arm of the company, what they call corporate social responsibility. Hey, guess what? By the way, we're Coca-Cola. Yeah, we made $1 trillion last year, but we're saving the rainforest and Amazon or something, right? And they think, oh, Coca-Cola is very ethical. They're doing great work. No, they're there to make money, but they knew that would influence people to believe that they're good. And that's kind of what every company it's not all about money, but in reality, it is about money. The number one rule is to satisfy the shareholders, right, and make the stock go up. That's the number one principle of any board of directors of a company. How has social influence affected your life? Right? You guys most of you just came out of high school. You were in the greatest social experiment ever. High school. High school is completely about like, hey, I don't really know my identity. And, I don't wanna feel left out, ostracized, alienated, right? I wanna be cool. I wanna dress a certain way, talk a certain way, hang out with certain people, get with my groups. Has that behavior left a negative impact on you guys or positive impact? Who feel that high school was a negative influence? Yeah?
I think it was a positive influence.
Positive influence, right? Maybe because it taught you a lot.
Yeah, right.
About trying to find good in. But still, yeah, it's one of the great social experiments too. I've been there, right? I went to Lane Tech. At that time, I think Lane was probably the biggest school in Chicago. You know? It was an awesome school. I think at that time it was like the #1 academic school. Then it wouldn't but it was a lot of pressure because it was almost like a small college. It was just so many students. And at that time, there were a lot of gangs, right? I grew up in the late 90s as a teenager. A lot of gangs, right? Every day I would walk through the GDs, the Vice Lords, the Stones, the Kings, the Eagles, the Cobras. Chicago looked completely different. Every neighborhood had a gang. And so therefore I saw a lot of social influence of peers, right? Guys who are out killing people, shooting drive-bys, robbing, stealing. People having kids straight out of high school or in high school. Right? A lot of those guys and females are, in jail or dead. Or lives just devastated by early behaviors. But there were a lot of influence, a lot of people still trying to find their identity, completely following groups to conform of a group, and those groups have norms and values, and very few people who go against them, right? You join a gang and you say, hey, I'm gonna be a renegade within the gang. Most likely the gang's gonna disagree and they'll kill you. Disposition versus situational attribution should, this one talked about the church in South Carolina, we just skipped that. Attitudes and actions. One of the most powerful things in life are attitude. What is your attitude? Attitude dictates behavior, because attitude is really your thoughts about a certain thing. Your thoughts about something. If you're very negative at school, I guarantee you'll do crappy at school, right? If you're very positive about school, you'll probably do very, very well. But such as life, that's kind of with everything in life, right? Attitude is one of the most powerful because typically attitude has to deal with how others want to be around you. If you're a very friendly, likable person, I'm pretty sure a lot of people would love to be around you. If you're very intelligent and thoughtful and expressive, people will probably gravitate and want to learn more from you. Because most people are trying to move up in life, right? So if you have a crappy attitude, even if you're a nice person, generally towards, a select few of others, even if you have money, you have this and that, you're good looking, it won't matter. Poor attitudes lead to very poor dispositions. Right? I would say maybe with the exception of money. If you get money, you can have a crappy attitude and still get into very powerful positions. Peripheral root persuasion, no need to really go over that. Central root persuasion. Actions affects attitudes. Foot and door phenomenon, which is basically saying that the opposite, that actions affects attitudes, which is true. But first, attitudes leads to actions first. Right? Role-playing affects attitudes, which is kind of, you see in the military or in the police, you have to go through situational training, right? To change your attitude about certain high anxiety situations. So role-playing does have an immense effect on how we perceive things to be. Depends on the role. Cognitive dissonance, we know what that is. We know what cognitive dissonance is. We hear that in society quite a bit. Which is just your bias, right? Your bias based on your belief. I mean, you're not gonna believe anything else because it doesn't support your belief, regardless if it's fact or not. People can act themselves into a way of thinking as easily as they can think of themselves acting in a certain way. You guys believe in that? You can act your way into a certain way of thinking as easily as you can think of themselves acting in a certain way. Right? Kind of fake it till you make it principle there. In life, I think it is good to really fake it until you make it. Fake it until you make it has to do with your mind frame, your mindset. And typically, if you create certain thoughts, like we said before, thoughts are not only limited to the mind, limited to the brain, not only limited to the body, thoughts radiate, right? The mind is a radiating force for us, which means it can manifest into real things out in the world. So if you can think your way into something, you can manifest certain things. Social influences, norms, rules for expected and acceptable behavior, influence and power of norms. What are some norms out in society right now, in our society? What are some norms? What are some norms you guys follow?
Wait, you said one more time, what are some norms we what?
That we follow out in society. What are some norms?
Don't be racist.
Right, wait, okay, don't be racist, right? Well, maybe that might be very selective, right? Because there's a lot of racist people. Yeah, we can say now we're probably trying to promote the deconstruction of racism, right? Because race is stupid, right? Here's the thought experiment. Is race a real thing? Yes or no? Simple answer. Simple answer. Black, white, Latino, Asian. Yes or no answer? It's not, what is it then?
I mean, at the end of the day, we're all human, and we all, like, keep kind of personal, and we're all gonna have the same organs, and we're gonna be in the same place.
So what is race?
Social construct.
Yeah, absolutely, there you go. In the former Soviet Union, there were 60-some races. Guess what? They all were blonde, white, or blue eyes. Make sense? It's a social construct, right? The Chinese hated the Cambodians and the Vietnamese, even though they're right next door and they practically look alike. They still hate them to this day for whatever geographical, cultural reasons, religious reasons, whatever the case may be. Right? So think of that. Think of the programming. You're like, hey, you know, I've been programmed because I thought it was something completely different. I thought it was supposed to dictate how people thought and behaved. No, that's called culture, right? And we say you can enter and exit culture anytime you want to, right? So think of that concept, social construct. It is there for a reason. And what is the reason? I don't know. You guys figure out what the reason is. It's for positive things or for negative things, or divide and conquer, or, you know, whatever you think it is. But be very well, it's a social construct, right? You go to another country, they also have racial categories that don't look like ours, completely different. Okay? Hence why we should know the difference between race, ethnicity, culture. You know, people lump it all together in one big old package and just say, oh, this is supposed to mean a lot. And it does, but does racism exist? Absolutely, it exists. Because we say, hey, these are the norms, right? So now that I believe that this is real, this is an assumption and a prediction about people that I don't know, that I don't intimately know, I can, you know, have all these thoughts about them, right? So therefore, that's actually a very good example, right? So race was a very good example of the norms, right? This is the norm, this is what we do, this is what my family believes, this is what I believe, this is how it goes, it is what it is, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Cultural influences, behaviors, ideas, attitudes, values, and traditions shared by a group of people and transmitted from one generation to the next, preservation of innovation and division of labor. What are some cultural influences? Give me some examples. You guys are all part of some culture, to some degree, right? You guys are part of sports culture, right? Other people are from other parts of the world, other religious beliefs. What are some influences passed down from the culture? What are some of the ideas, the attitudes, the values?
Going to college or staying in school.
Right, we could say education. In some culture, education is extremely important, regardless of the results. Right, we can have all the data that shows like, hey, you know what, man, actually going to college, you weigh in debt versus income over a long period of time. Like, you know, it doesn't work anymore, right? So we're not paying like what mom and dad and grandpa paid $200 per course. You're like, that was wonderful back then. That's the greatest deal. But now it's like we're paying gas prices for school. You know, like school's awesome, but you do the math, break out the calculator, right, for debt versus income, taxes. You might have a good argument against school. But beyond that, because why? Because in certain cultures, there's a social value to education. And we can call that prestige. Prestige is extremely powerful. You're like, oh, that's very prestigious. Wow, you're a CEO, right? You're this, you're that, this, you're that. In the military, you're a general, you're a lieutenant, you're a sergeant, yeah. Right? We actually look at those things as very authoritative. And a lot of cultures put a lot of value. So, you know, for my example, let's say PhD, right? Dr. Ross, right? Other cultures may look at, oh my God, that's the greatest thing ever. Here it's just like, yeah, whatever. Right? Okay, we know you know how to learn and do research. Congratulations. But in a lot of cultures, it would be the greatest thing ever. Particularly like in a lot of Indian cultures, which you have a lot of Indian friends, and we always talk about the PhD. And they say the PhD is almost like just a birthright. Like everybody in India has a PhD in their country. Right? Everybody gets a doctorate. That's just like, that's normal. Here in the United States, I think less than, some years ago, it was like less than 1% of the people had a doctorate in the country, right? So it's still, I guess, very, very prestigious, right? Very looked upon as high value. But does it have a lot of influence? Absolutely. Absolutely. Right? Yes, having certain degree of education can get you to very good places in life. But that's very dependent on the individual who knows how to utilize their degree or the use of their education. And that's probably the biggest thing. Like, hey, school's wonderful if you know how to use it. School is useless if you don't use it. You know, the paper on the wall just to look at all day and to eat canned soup for 20 years. Yeah, I don't know what that does. You know, make you feel mushy inside or something. But it may have no real actual value out in the real world. So yeah, that's a attitude towards education. What else? What other attitudes? Cultural attitudes. Family, right? Starting a family could be very, very important to certain cultures, right? Obviously, religious beliefs are extremely important in certain cultures, right? Tradition, right? Celebratory things, right? This is how we do this, is important, we use these colors, we gotta do this is the process. And these things are transmitted from one generation to the next, handed down to children, and the children take it up and pass it on. It could be almost like recipes handed out from grandma. And it's used for preservation of innovation and division of labor, right? Remember we talked about we want to evolve and innovate constantly. So if we didn't have certain behaviors and attitudes towards technology, we probably wouldn't have the technology, right? We see it as completely bad. We don't want to create that because that's just such a bad thing. But at a certain part in time, we found these things to be very, very good and predominantly good over bad. Hence why we create more new technology over time. Now we're into electric vehicles, and that's a new innovation, and we find that to be better than gas-powered vehicles because of the environment and other reasons too. Division of labor. You guys taking a history class to learn sort of industrial revolution. Decision science, division of labor, right? How to maximize production, get things done, create specializations. Those are also influences. And we see that now as more countries become capitalistic, right? Let's say we look around the world and we say, hey, you know what? A lot of countries used to be extremely, extremely religious, right? But it's a fine line between religion and making a lot of money through capitalism, right? So we see a lot of countries around the world become highly, highly economical and capitalistic practices, regardless of the history, the religion, the old traditions, the old ways. You know, now everybody needs a Rolls Royce, a Bentley, a big skyscraper, something of the sort, right? High-speed trains, et cetera, et cetera. So we are more influenced now by innovating, by creating better things for the masses of people so that everybody has a more comfortable life. Culture, another continuation, cultural influences, adaptability and cultural variations among belief values and how children are nurtured, how dead are buried, which clothes are worn, right? Things vary over time, they vary, they change, they evolve, they shape lives. Certain cultures burn bodies, right? They may burn a body as a burial ritual here in the United States. We saw that. We don't want to see it, right? We call it cremation, right? Put the body in a big oven, burn it down, burn the bones, etc. But we're not out there celebrating while the body's burned, right? We may think that that's completely weird. We don't want to involve that. Other cultures are like, no, this is how it's done. It's a natural process. Clothes. I think there's now becoming more of a gray area, right? I think fashion is cyclical, so I don't think anything's really new. So things are just coming back to what they were 20 years ago. Conformity, complying with social pressures, right? We talked about education, we wanna conform, because within society requires education for us to be successful, make money, and have careers. Therefore, we conform to education, and we're here trying to learn, we spend the money to do it in order to get a degree. Right, so we comply. We don't become renegades and say, nah, I'm dropping out today, and I'm just gonna do something completely different. Social contagion, chameleon effect, right? Things are just contagious, like as on the internet, and everybody starts doing the same trends. Natural mimicry, we tend to mimic each other. We do that as babies, right? You make a face to a toddler or a baby, they'll probably replicate the face. Those things carry on to us as adults, they're just more subconscious at this point. But we tend to still mimic others. We mimic a perception of ourselves, right? Enable ability to empathize, which means we tend to be sad or cry if we see people being hurt. We've used Ukraine, Russia-Ukraine conflict as an example, because of the internet, because of conformity. Russia and Ukraine is a big social phenomenon, even though there's probably a lot of other conflicts going on around the world, for probably people that we really don't care too much about. Right? So for whatever reason, Russia has taken precedence over the massive society and towards our empathy. Oh my gosh, how could they, right? And then we'll pick some other parts of the world, be like, hey, there's like 300-400 conflicts going on, they're chopping off arms and heads and legs, and everybody got it now. But I can't really relate to those people, so therefore, we don't care. Conformity experiments, which of the three comparison lines is equal to the standard line? Which is, so when they do sort of, some of the social experiments they do is give out like fake exams. And they watch the people and they use actors within these classrooms. So say like if you showed up the first day of class and you didn't know anybody in the class. You showed up and gave an exam the first day. You're like, oh my God, okay. And now all these other people in class, and it's a very simple exam, like extremely simple math, right? You will probably still be skeptical of your own answers if it's a subject you're not too comfortable with. You'll be skeptical of your own answers, and you would cheat. You look over, right? And let's say everybody close to you gave the same answer. Therefore, you choose to answer, right? You choose to answer to other people because you would think that they're right. So to think that people are right is to also to conform, right? It's part of these things like, hey, I'm not too sure about myself, but everybody else is doing it, so therefore I'm gonna put this answer. And the answer is completely wrong, right? Because we had actors in the class to put the wrong answer on purpose just to see if you would conform to do it. Here they're just talking about, here's the standard line, and they gave a bunch of people to ask them, hey, between these three lines, which one's closest to the standard line? And enough people say number 3, and therefore you actually will believe it, even though you clearly see with your own eyes that this, which means we constantly question ourselves because we don't have too many independent thoughts that are virtually our own, right? We kind of let the other people think for us. That happens in society. If you don't think for yourselves, others will do it for you. That's the mantra of life. Any questions so far about social influence and social psychology? It's a lot of money to be a social psychologist, right? You would work for Facebook and Google and analyze the behavior of people to see the trends so that you can make predictions about what's going to be the next big thing. Think of that, like CEOs or board of directors. You know, the real skill in that is not that the people are the most intelligent. We just said these people are C students, so they're actually probably not the most intelligent, right? But they probably have the ability to predict based off the assumptions of human behavior, which is probably one of the greatest skills you can have. You're able to know what people are gonna do next because you understand human behavior very well. That's what will make you a great CEO. Right, Tim Cook, CEO of Apple. Not that he's the smartest dude there, he's not. There's other computer scientists, engineers, Harvard, Yale, Oxford, way beyond Tim Cook. But his is probably to have forethought about human behavior, what people are gonna want, what people are gonna follow based off the trends. Normative social influence, conform to avoid rejection or to gain social approval. Right? People are up in arms about Donald Trump. People are up in arms about Will Smith. Why? Because they're afraid that this could become normal. That's probably the real truth. Right? We don't accept that because we don't want that to be normalized in society. Right? We don't want certain behaviors to become normal. Because we know certain bad behaviors that become normal leads to a totally different country we live in. Right? Let's looking at World War II with the Nazis. I think they've done tests to say how nice you consider yourself to be towards humankind. They asked the German population this question. They asked even most of the Nazi members this question. And a lot of people said that they were nice towards their fellow man, and they had kindness and empathy. But then they were committing mass genocide, so how does that make sense? Right? So when things become normal, we have a very skewed perception of our fellow man and how to treat each other. Accept others' opinions about reality. Right? Remember we said that the point of this class is to think, to become an independent thinker, think for yourself, and you just become an awesome adult, not totally influenced by the world. And you discover new things about life and health and mental health and personal development. What time is it?
40.
Right. That's the point of this class, right? You guys can all be a personal development guru to help people become better at life, better well-being, be able to think for themselves and free themselves of the reign of social prison, right? Just being locked in what others think. And once again, if you don't think for yourselves, other people will think for you and how to be your life. Okay, last question. Is conformity good or bad? Before you go.
I think it could be good.
How so?
It's like, isn't conformity like, I don't know, I feel like it's good to like, I don't know, it's like in certain situations, conformity is good, you know?
Yeah. Right, remember we said conformity led to a lot of innovation, right? A lot of people weren't able to work and say, nobody wants to work anymore because they're all independent thinkers. Then nothing else would, we wouldn't have anything going on in society. All right.